So I just watched season one of Record of Ragnarok, and what I have to say is I have a very unpopular opinion when it comes to this particular topic of animation. I prefer slideshow looking animation, slideshow looking anime over overly CGI anime. It's like that CGI animation is just ugly as fuck to me. I'm just being honest with you. It makes my dick soft. I'm not a fan of it. Like I prefer the slideshow anime over bad CGI. Now good CGI or CGI in spots but not things that are overly important, that doesn't distract me too much. But I like when the animation doesn't distract me from the show. So I'm gonna give you a perfect example of what I mean. Because there's high quality anime that's done well, and a good example of that would be like Attack on Titan, or just high quality, just really high quality animation. But it takes a big budget to do that. A good example of that would be like modern examples would be like Fire Force or My Hero Academia. It's like very high quality anime, not very reliant on CGI, but it still appears to be mostly hand drawn. But they have a high budget, so they get it done. Demon Slayer is also like that, but you know what? No, no, no. Demon Slayer, that's a bad example. Part of the reason I don't like that because I feel like sometimes I feel like the fights can feel a little slideshowy at first. But maybe that's just because I wasn't able to get into it enough to continue it, and I didn't get into it enough to binge it. But I'm not talking about Demon Slayer right now. I'm talking about Record of Ragnarok. I have friends who saw Record of Ragnarok or who read the manga, and they love the manga, and they hate the anime because they don't like that slideshow type of animation. But for me, it doesn't bother me so much. Just like I'm the type of person who I will sit there and watch a comic book on YouTube, and then they'll just put some music behind it, and then they'll let the scenes go by. But the picture's still good. But when I'm just that's just my take on the animation. So the next thing I want to talk about is the idea of it. I love the idea of Record of Ragnarok, how it has like this Norse idea of Ragnarok being the day where it's like this apocalyptic idea. One thing that I do like about anime and Japanese culture when it comes to making anime is that because their society isn't as religious as ours is over here in the US, they can take a lot more liberty, and they're comfortable taking a lot more liberty when it comes to how they play with the idea of different religions. Because usually, like, there's different anime that when they touch on the topic of like Christianity, or they touch on the topic of like biblical things and different types of gods from different cultures, usually they just have fun with it. They put their own spin on it, and they don't try to go out of their way to make it too accurate, right? A good example of that would be like Rurouni Kenshin, right? There's this character in Rurouni Kenshin, I forgot his name, but there's like these Christians there, but their Christian beliefs don't really represent traditional Christianity. But it's like that's just kind of how they saw it. They put it in anime. That's how it works, right? Now, my favorite fight in the whole show, the first season. Yes, there's spoiler warning. My favorite fight the whole season, and it was a little bit it's in the middle. So the first season's 10 episodes. The second fight was my favorite. Now, Lubu versus Thor, that was tough. Now the designs of them, the designs are very artistic and they're very creative. I do like designs that are a little bit more in pocket. Just like when I'm listening to music, I like drums that stay in pocket a little bit more. I do like more of a style that just feels like it's not traditional, but just an anime style that it's easier for me to get into a show when I feel like the character designs don't distract me too much. Like Thor's hammer, his character design is creative. I got into it. I was still able to get into it, but there's different aspects of it that I enjoy, right? But just seeing Thor look that way versus how I'm used to Thor looking, it kind of throws me off a little bit, and it takes away a little bit from my view of associating that character with that particular god. That's good and it's bad. It's both sides to it. But when I was watching Record of Ragnarok, Lubu versus Thor, that was a good fight. I enjoyed it. There's some twists in the fights. One thing I really like about the show is that I legitimately don't know who's going to win when the fight starts. Halfway through the fight, I still don't know who's going to win. The only fight where I knew where the person was going to win was Sasaki Kojiro versus Poseidon. That was the only one where I felt like I knew that one was going to win. But other than that, I have no idea. Like, I had no idea who's going to win between Thor and Lubu. At first, I thought Thor was just going to wash him, But then Lubu started going hard, and Lubu started cutting ass too. And I'm like, man, they're doing a good job with not making it overly predictable. But I didn't really see Thor losing. But with all of the main gods in these fights being very prolific gods, it's like you don't know who's going to win and who's going to lose. I didn't know about Lubu, so that's cool. Very next fight, my favorite. I don't know how they're going to top Zeus versus Adam. Like Adam he really went hard. Like the way they described, Adam, and the way they described his backstory, and then his explanation is like, oh, what's your hate for the god? It's like y'all mischaracterized me. What father needs his arm to be twisted to want to save his children? And I'm like, yeah, you almost got me with the waterworks too. That shit was hard. And then also just the way they flipped the Garden of Eden story of paradise, where when they went into the courtroom, and when they went into the courtroom, how Adam was walking in there, and instead of it being a situation where he blamed Eve for eating the fruit, and she didn't even eat the fruit in this particular story, like what I said about how they have fun with the ideas of twisting the characters around. The thing about it for me was like when he was just spitting, like biting all the apples and spitting them out, it's like it was just hard to me. And then his divine mirror technique, or divine reflection, that shit was hard. That was hard. And him versus Zeus, that was just a great fight. I loved it. The way they tied the Adamas technique or form into Adamas later on in the season, that was dope. Just the character of Adam was just, it was just crazy, because I wasn't expecting him to be as good of a fighter, and all that dude had was some brass knuckles. So I'm like, I think it was just a really great fight. It was a really great fight. I love the way it went. I thought he was about to beat Zeus for a second there. I really thought he was about to beat Zeus, but he has such a strong will that when he died standing up. That shit was crazy to me. So, and he was still throwing punches after he died. So I really enjoyed that part. I had no idea who was going to win. Last one was Poseidon versus Sasaki Kojiro. That was dope. They're showing that the next season is going to start off with Jack the Ripper versus Hercules. I mean, I like Hercules and I don't like Jack the Ripper, so I'm kind of on the fence about it, because fuck Jack the Ripper. That dude's a serial killer. And then Hercules, I mean, that's a hero. He's a hero to even the humans. So it's like, I don't know. It's like, I want the humans to win, of course, because I'm a human myself, but at the same time, it's fuck Jack the Ripper. So it's like the show's pretty interesting. Sometimes it can go a little bit over the top with the characters, because they get really colorful. But that's just a regular anime trope. You got the fanboys. They kind of come off a little bit like, like Lubu's guys. They act like they want to top them off. I don't know. It's some other shit going on. But I was surprised when they chose Sasaki Kojiro instead of Musashi Miyamoto. And I love the way they wrote that story to where he's a man who fights in his mind instead of a man who just goes and chases after glory, and that's how he was able to win. That was dope. Like when I started watching the show, the only person who I was sure was going to be on the show in my mind was it would be between, like, maybe Adam's going to be in here, I don't know, but I was like, yeah, they're definitely going to have Miyamoto Musashi. I just knew they were going to have Musashi, like, being one of the fighters. So when they didn't, that was a pleasant surprise. There's a lot of surprises in this show. There's a lot of twists and turns. I love the way they had the Valkyries in there, and how the Valkyries are tied to the weapons. It's just, that's really dope. I like the way the Valkyrie came in and challenged everybody and challenged the egos of the gods, and showing how the gods in these different archetype, or in these different pantheons, have huge egos and are just as egoistic as humans. I love that. It's just like it's really great, and I love the camaraderie that happens between the fights, because fights are something that creates bonds. I remember growing up in the hood. You fight, that's usually, like, as a guy, you get in fights. A lot of times your best friends will come out of fights. You get in a fight on the playground. If it's somewhat of an even fight, y'all become friends, and that's something that I've noticed. It's one thing that's just the beauty of war. It's the beauty of being a warrior. Like, I'm a boxer. When you're a boxer and you have some really good sparring sessions, you get cool with people like that. You start a friendly rivalry, and it's something that I really enjoy about the show. So this is just my take on the first season of Record of Ragnarok. Let's see. Is there anything else I'm gonna add? Let's see. I could touch on some things as far as, like, no, I'm not gonna touch on that. I'm gonna leave that for another time.